Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and look who I've got back to the channel, Mike Ladano from Grab a Stack of Rock and the Contrarians. How's it going?
It's going well. How about you?
It's going fantastic, mate. We are going to talk about Rush, and I thought that out of all the panelists that I've dealt with, you're the person for the job, and we're going to talk about two albums. Rush Signals, that came out in 1982, and Rush Hold Your Fire, which came out in 1987. Now, a lot of folks are going, why are you picking this? Well, to me, I think it's a start of an era, and it's also an end of an era. So Signals kind of started off the era of synth and going in a bit of a new wave direction, all whilst they still had their prog roots and a little bit of hard rock. Hold Your Fire was the end of that cycle of albums. I love Rush. I love 70s Rush. I love 90s Rush. But my personal preference has always been 80s Rush. I think it's my entry point, and they're the albums I always seem to gravitate to. What about you, Mike?
There's a couple of ways to look at this. In short, I agree with you. Um, 80s Rush wasn't my entry point because I didn't become a Rush fan until around Counterparts. But having said that, the Rush that I grew up with on television and on the radio was mostly the 80s Rush, and I always had a soft spot for subdivisions. And we will go further. But I think, and this is where people are going to start throwing the darts at my face. You hear this a lot, especially in Canada. Oh, Geddy Lee's voice is like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, I can't stand Geddy Lee's voice. And you hear that a lot. When I was working at the record store for 12 years, I heard that a lot. And I always felt that Geddy Lee's voice became more palatable to the mainstream during the 80s.
I agree
I
with
think we
you.
can.
I
Okay.
agree with you.
So
I look. I'll straight off the bat. I agree with you. I think he was concentrating a lot on his vocals, refining his vocals, and he became actually a better singer. And arguably, some of his best vocals are in the 80s.
Okay, so you and I are on the same page, whether I have
Yeah,
darts thrown at my face or not.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So let's get this straight, folks. We love Rush, but our preference is 80s. So that's the entry point. And I just thought it'd be just have a bit of a yak about two albums where it's really the start and the finish of an album cycle. Why don't we start off with Rush Signals? Now, this was a relatively big success, went straight to number one in Canada, number three in UK, and number 10 in the US, went single platinum. To me, I think this is a change album. It's a change in sounds, and I don't think they called the album Signals for no reason, because it is actually a signal to the audience, to the broader fan base, that there's some change happening. We are listening to other musical influences, and even lyrically, the palette of topics is looking at world events, looking at matters of the heart. To me, it is very aptly called Signals. Wouldn't you agree?
I think that's a great analysis. I hadn't considered that before, but yeah, that makes perfect sense. Um, it is a change, obviously. We have this album, and then they build upon this with the following next like four albums, really, up until Hold Your
Mm.
Fire, and then they made a turn again on Presto. So yeah, you're right. They're signaling. You are right. They are signaling to the audience, hey, we're Rush, but we also like listening to the Police. We also like listening to this band and that band that's really
Simple
happening right now.
Minds, Simple
Simple
Minds,
Minds.
New Wave. Uh,
Rush had their fingers on the pulse, and they did again in the 1990s, which we're not going to discuss today, but they have always been into whatever's going on new, you
yeah,
know? Even in terms of the bands that they chose to open for them.
yeah.
So yeah, this is Rush saying it's a new decade. We're not writing 17-minute songs about Bytor and the Snow Dog anymore. Let's write about some things that maybe we're feeling in our lives or that we're interested in our daily discussions as friends. And let's put down some music that's maybe a little bit less on the showy offy side and more focused on arrangement, more focused on some melody. Let's be honest. When you asked me to do this show, you were picking the right guy because, as we've talked about in many past episodes, I'm drawn to the melodic albums of discographies.
100%. Now, a lot of things I get out of this album, and I think it starts off with Subdivisions, is a lot of melancholy and sadness and a lot of raw emotion. And I find a lot of the Rush albums, they can use synth to express those melancholy emotions than just being stripped down in guitar, bass, and drums. So the palette of music is more cinematic. And with Subdivision, if you don't mind, let's have a bit of a chat, because that is the signature song, along with the Analog Key. I know you're going to have a chat about that. But to me, this signals the change of Rush. It's a song that's kind of very aspirational, dreamy, and it's about, folk hoping for a better place, escaping suburbia. This is a big song in Canada. This is a big Rush song, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that video was on TV all the time. Um, Now, keep in mind, of course, Canadian music is primarily played because there's rules about it here. It gives the bands a bit of a boost. They have to play X amount of Canadian content on the radio and on video as well. But even so, Subdivisions, I think, would have garnered as much attention as it did because when you think about it, that music video was very, very current. There's a kid wandering around downtown and he's going into a video arcade. That was so 1982. Pac-Man and all that stuff, Pac-Man Fever. And musically, we were starting to hear bands experimenting with the synth a little bit more and breaking through to the mainstream on the radio. So here's Rush. They're coming out with this song. It's hip, it's cool, and there was something very current about that. Subdivisions, sampling and stuff was starting to happen. And here's Rush not doing sampling necessarily, but they're doing that kind of style, that 80s Max Headroom kind of style. It's a great song. That synth is the hook that got me. Safe to say, the hook is what got me to be a Rush fan.
Yeah, there's
But
a lot of criticism about Alex's guitars not being in the forefront and taking a bit of a backward step. But I think he's integrally important in the sound of Rush because he plays a lot more textural melodies, so he does a lot of chords, he does a lot of arpeggios. If you listen to an isolated Alex track along a lot of these albums, he's still doing it. He's doing the business. He's filling out the space between the synth, the bass, and the drums. He's an important part, but no, he's not doing the flashy. It's not being the simplistic riffs. He's very much a part of that Rush sound. Don't you agree?
I want to talk about this a little bit more when we get to Hold Your Fire because I think the dynamic is very interesting on that album between the instruments. But you're 100% correct. Alex at this point is throwing in a lot of really interesting textures and tones with his guitars. On Signals, his guitar is still fairly prominent. Yes, there's synth, and he's sharing the stage with synth, and in one case, he's sharing the stage with violin as well. But yes, he's still an integral part. Um, you don't have to be shredding and you don't have to be riffing you don't have to be playing the working man riff to be providing a backbone to a song. Sometimes the backbone to a song can be something different than the working man riff. And Signals is a great example of some fine Alex guitar. He was definitely interested in 80s guitar players at that point. You can hear
Absolutely.
that. I think obviously later on, as we get to Hold Your Fire, he becomes more unhappy about the role of the guitar within Rush. He's been open about saying that when we get to the Presto album. But at this point, I think he's more enjoying the experimentation because this is new for Rush. This mixture of instruments is new. Um, and I think he's enjoying that at this point. He's not feeling squeezed out yet. But great stuff on this album, guitar wise.
Yeah, but this song is great. It's magnificent. It's a call to arms to all the misfits and all the loners. And, let's face it, Rush were like the biggest cult band in the universe. This is the signal song to them, to unite. So I think it's a great opening track and it sort of sets things up. I haven't focused on this song as part of the ones that I want to showcase, but I'll break out to you. You want to talk about the Analog Kid?
Yeah, actually, I do want to talk about the Analog Kid. You and I were talking about this offline, and how there's a mood on this album that is decidedly melancholy. It's a bit cloudy, a bit like the wind outside my window today. But the Analog Kid is not. That one strikes me as pure youthful joy. It sounds like summer. The fawn-eyed girl with sun-browned legs dances on the edge of his dream. Like that line right there paints a picture in my mind. Young love. And I haven't analyzed the lyrics deeply. I'm drawn to certain phrases that Neil Peart writes more than breaking down a song line by line, determining his message. But this one really speaks to me. And the riff, I mean, we want to talk about Alex playing riffs. This is the one on the album. This is the one. It's a great riff. Um, and Alex and Geddy also playing kind of in tandem. It's a sweet song, and probably it was a little bit soothing to those Rush fans that were kind of like, "It's all the synth stuff, man. Where's the guitar?" That probably the Analog Kid is the song that would have spoken to them the most.
Absolutely. Now, there's one thing that I'm noticing about Rush in this cycle of albums where they have what I call breakout moments where there's a key change and it goes from maybe a major to a minor chord and it gets all melancholy and very dreamy. Analog Kid has this where it just goes into this really dreamy, ethereal swirl melody. Big sensation quickens in his young restless heart. And the right name. Then there's a sudden change of key. It takes a left turn direction. It goes through all these sort of emerald, dreamy.
That moves me, just like Geddy singing. That moves me, and that's kind of a new feeling in this new era of Rush. That kind of direction, and there's another section that comes after that that's brilliant too. That speeds it up.
Yeah.
But
hey, I want to talk about the Digital Man. It's not called the Digital Man, but it's called Digital Man. To me, I think this is a man who's evolving and changing, and life is just progressing so quickly. He just does not rest. This is the most reggae Police song there is on the album. So they're really wearing their influences on their sleeve. But it's so aggressive. How can a song have so much synth reggae overtones but be so aggressive and sharp? The drumming and the bass, which just bubbles, it's in the pocket. It's got 12/8 beat. It just drives along. What do you think of this song?
Well, this is actually for me not one of my favorites on the album. I'm just taking a look at the lyrics here. It's really good lyrically. He picks up scraps of conversation, radio and radiation. It's just not one of my favorites personally. Um, I do like that this one hook, and there's like a synth riff that goes under it, but he's got a force field and a flexible plan. He's got a date with fate in a black sedan, that part, and then there's that whoa, 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 keyboard part underneath. I really like that, but to be honest with you, this is kind of the one where I'm waiting to get to the next tune.
Yeah, okay. Well, we just see a different view. That's
Yeah,
great. But yeah,
bound to happen.
to me, I think that they're picking up a sound which is very outside the typical the 70s Rush wheelhouse, and they're making it their own and putting extra aggression. It's like a little bit Police on steroids. It's really aggressive. And I tell you what, Neil's drumming is phenomenal. He's getting these little. I won't even pretend I'm no drum expert, but just the fills and the way he's just driving these songs along. He's just so in the pocket. It's great. I really think this is a great song. What's the next song that you'd like to spotlight on this album?
Actually, I wouldn't mind spotlighting The Weapon. the next song on the CD, the first song on side two. It's a longer one. You're talking about sort of darker tones. I think The Weapon is that. Um, it's funny, there's a single version of this song that I'm missing physically in my collection, but I would love to have, where they had Joe Flaherty, the actor Joe Flaherty, playing the character of Count Floyd. And he's introducing the song. This is a scary song. This is called The Weapon. Ooh. And when you think about it, it actually is a scary song. Listen to it. Not even just lyrically, but also there's some musically chilling moments too. Boom, boom, boom. I love The Weapon. Um, I don't know if that song had any impact as a single outside of Canada, but I think it's a great single, to be honest with you. And I would love to get a copy of that with the Joe Flaherty, the
Yeah,
Joe Flaherty part.
it's a deep cut, but it's a compelling song. No, that's a good pick. The one I'm going to go next is Losing It. It
Oh,
starts off with this Ben Mink violin line that's so melancholy. Again, it's the melancholy, the sadness. This album has got a lot of sadness in it. And I'm just wondering if, the guys in the band are looking back at their past. It's kind of like a psychology album, trying to go deep into what they went through when they were young and growing up in Canada. It's an aspirational album, but it's a really deep going inside themselves album. And it's quite emotional. But this one, to me, is the emotional heart of the album. And it's about, Getty was saying, it's about aging and losing a talent. And it's sadder still to watch it die than never to have known it at all. And I think this is an example of Getty's voice being mellow, melodic, even gentle, and his phrasing is perfect. So, to all those naysayers that say he's screechy, he's really concentrating and trying to get his voice right on this album. And this is an example where he sings beautifully. Alex's guitar lines are atmospheric. Yeah, I just think this is such an emotional song. I love it. What do you think of this one?
if you had asked me, I would have picked this one next as well. The violin on this song is outstanding. Thank you for highlighting Ben Mink. But not just that, the way that the violin works with Getty's vocals and Alex's guitar, that it's so beautiful. There, you can tell there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of soul being poured into this song, not just from the performances, but also from Neil. And yeah, the lyrics are very poignant. Once you pick up on what they are about, they're very poignant. Especially, I hate to say it, but maybe for guys our age, we realize we can't, sink the basket the way that we used to in our younger days. Um, I think this is a song that will become more and more and more appreciated as our generation ages. I hate to say it, but emotional heart of the album, yes, and also a change of pace for the album because even though there are other melancholy songs, there are none like Losing It. So we go from what's the track before? We go from New World Man to Losing It, and then into the countdown, which kind of goes back to that proggy, keyboardy Rush sound. But Losing It, you wouldn't think, oh man, that sure sounds like Rush. No, no, this is the new Rush.
And kudos to this band for, basically pushing the boundaries and exploring different musical palettes. And that's why I really appreciate the 80s Rush, because they're really pushing melody, exploring new time signatures. If they need to throw in instruments like a violin, let's just do it. Musically curious. That's what it is. It's
Oh,
curiosity, and that's what attracts me to this band in the 80s. I love it.
well said. And that's
Yeah.
true because they were discovering these new bands like the Police and whatnot, and they were like, "Ooh,
Mm,
that's cool. Let's try that." And
yeah.
that's it. They never stopped listening to music, those guys. Even as they
Yeah.
grew older, they never stopped listening to new music.
Mike, I see so much social media commentary where fans go, "This is where I got off," and look, that's fine. You're used to a particular style of Rush, but give it a go. There's just so much, maybe a few listens to some of these albums, it's full of rewards. Don't give up on it. It's just, there's so many treasures in the 80s. I think we've got to talk about Countdown. It's inevitable. It's a finale. So I'll throw it to you before I start gabbing away on this one. What do you think of this song?
Well, I'm a sci-fi geek, aren't I? So, a
You
song about a
are.
shuttle.
You are.
Yeah. A song about a shuttle launch, that's like my bread and butter. This is so
Mm.
good. And all of that voiceover stuff, the radio, like, it's so good. So good. It almost kind of bookends with Subdivisions where they had the voiceover line, Subdivisions. Almost kind of bookends that with the dialogue going on. But you have a launch, and Neil is so apt with these lyrics, uh, cut the tension like a knife. It's not an actual line, but that's sort of the feeling that you get. And musically, I almost get like a Marillion vibe. I don't know if that's sacrilege to say that you get a Marillion vibe from a Rush song or not, but I kind of get a Marillion vibe with the keyboard part. It sounds very Mark Kelly to me. This is the most progressive song in the album, possibly.
I think so.
I think, yeah.
So
Great closer. Just kind of
yeah,
fades off, but it
it's a
has
lot of.
really cool. It has a really cool kind of like outro riff that kind of brings me back to the Moving Pictures album a bit. That
Hmm.
down. It kind of brings me back to Moving Pictures a bit, and I think this is another song that Rush fans who maybe they went too soft or whatever they're going to say. This might be a song to check out that you might dig. That it definitely is progressive, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. It's a great
I don't
tune.
think it gets spoken about enough. I think it's a little bit of a lost track. I think it got a bit of heat in the day, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about this album and focus on this song. I think it's a mighty fine song. There's so much tension in the song where you hear the voices of the ground control, the audio between the astronauts and the ground control, and the music. It builds up tension. This is the most cinematic, exciting track on the whole album. It has so much build up, and I love the way that they put the samples, the audio samples, in this song. It's just perfect. Now, it's an interesting thing you said about Subdivisions. If you listen closely, there are some reprises. There's some melody in this song, inserted the song, that sound exactly like Subdivisions. So it's a little bit of a cycle. It's a little bit of closure. Listen to it again, but there's a little bit of a hint of the Subdivision. The main synth line. And Geddy, what an inventive synth solo. He was good. He was good at synth. It's a very inventive synth solo. So I think this is a really great close to the album.
It's a brilliant close to the album, in fact. Um, I really like Signals. I guess I should just say this now. I think Signals is my favorite Rush studio album. So,
Mm-hmm.
spoiler alert, this is might have been the first Rush studio album that I bought. I had Chronicles. No, it's not. It's the second. It's the second Rush studio album that I bought. So it's near and dear to my heart.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I what can I say? I love this album. And there, another signal right there as well. The dog sniffing the fire the fire hydrant. A little bit of a signal
Absolutely.
here. Great cover art by Hugh Syme.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to 1987, which was an interesting year in rock. Rock was getting very corporate, and a lot of the production of so many bands was becoming very glossy. You had lots of reverb, where too much sound and overdubs was never enough. Every single track had to have some music or sounds on it, and I think Rush were drinking the juju for a while. It probably peaked at Power Windows. That was probably the most elaborate sounding album. But for my perspective, I think they did take it back, but there's still a lot happening in this album. It didn't do as well as the previous Rush albums, so I think there was an audience that was starting to fall off. So UK went number 10, Canada number 9, and US number 13. It only did gold. Now, previously in the early Rush years, they were multi-platinum. and or at least single platinum. So this was kind of the start of a run where they would be just doing gold. Force 10. So this is where you know that it's the full bells and whistles. You've got this layered choir, bit of the drum shuffle, the hard bass line, and a driving guitar just weaving. To me, it's bliss. There's a lot happening. It's very layered, but there's with controlled aggression. What do you think of this song?
Okay, so this is something I wanted to talk about, and it has to do with the way that Getty's bass is used on this entire album. And I was listening to the song in the car earlier today with my wife, and I was pointing out Getty's bass is so prominent on so many of these songs, and this is one of them. So we have Getty's bass delivering sort of the first hooks of the album with that boom, 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 and he's spending a lot of time up here on the neck, playing a lot of higher notes, and he's spending a lot of time kind of like plucking his strings on a lot of these songs, and the bass line becomes integral to the songs. And then Alex is in the background with these interesting, almost like chiming rhythm guitars, ching ching, and he's providing this different kind of backbone, which is almost like a curtain of guitars. It's almost like you have a curtain of guitar wind chimes. This is the way that I'm envisioning it in my mind. This is an interesting song. I'm hearing Neil Peart using, I'm thinking triggers to trigger sounds, because there's that you know that part that I'm trying to mime. And to me that sounds like a trigger, but I'm no expert on drums. We're gonna have to speculate on some of these things. But you're hearing the band really expanding their palette once again. Neil in particular is using a lot of different percussion stuff. I'm sure some of it is actual wooden percussion and some is triggered. Force 10 is another song that kind of like modernizes Rush just a tad more. And then, of course, next album they pull back a bit. But I can see where this would really throw Rush fans if they picked this album out in the middle of the 80s. Yeah, that would throw Rush fans.
It didn't throw me. I love it. I absolutely love it. And again, it goes into this left turn when it gets to the chorus, where it turns into this dreamy soundscape. It's ethereal. It's like synthwave with Getty's voice gently prodding you. So very aggressive playing.
Look into the eye of the storm. Look out for the force without form. Look around at the sight and sound. Look in. Look out, look around. Tough times, man, tough talking, man, tough hearts, man, tough songs.
You can really hear in that sample the bass that I'm talking about, and how Alex's guitar behind him is like a shimmering curtain of chords, and it's brilliant, and I love it. And great singing by Getty. That look around. That part there, his voice is just
my hairs on the back of my head were just sticking up on end. I love it. It's just beautiful. It's just so dreamy. So this is what happens in the 80s. There's so many of these songs where you think the song's going in one direction and it takes a left turn and they go into these dreamy soundscapes. It's sort of like a pause. It's a breather, but it's just so emotionally affecting. And I think they could do this because they had all this technology. They had the very best synths technology at hand. They had an uber fantastic producer in Peter Collins who really understood their sound and their DNA. And I think that's just outstanding. It's a highlight of the song. It just gives you so much emotional heart. This song is another aspirational. There's so many aspirational songs about things that you aspire to be better, you know, being positive or looking forward. This is where you are now. Be aware of your surroundings, but look to the future and you can make things even better for you. And, Alex weaves these little plucked notes, fills the space between the drums, bass, and synth. As I said, I'd love to hear an isolated drum track, guitar track on these albums, and you'll hear how busy he actually is. A lot of these naysayers are saying, "Oh, he's just so far down in the mix and not doing anything." He was actually very much part of the sound.
Oh yeah, he was. It's a different role for the guitar compared to I keep bringing up Working Man, but that's a perfect example of how different the role is.
Absolutely. What song would you like to showcase, Mike?
Peter, we may as well go with Time Stand Still since it's the next song. And up here in Canada, big hit. That video was on TV all the time. It's a very, very innovative video for its time with all the band members floating around in this space. And then Amy Mann with the movie camera trying to film them. Amy Mann? I mean, my goodness. Has Rush done any kind of duet like this before? I don't know. But it's so, her voice is so sweet and works so well with Geddy's. Um, the lyrics on this song really hit me. And you mentioned, looking around. Well, that's what this song is about. This song is about stopping, taking stock, taking a moment to smell the air, taste your coffee, look around yourself and just enjoy the moment. This song is about freezing time and enjoying the moment. And again, as we get older, I think some of these songs speak to us differently and more, we identify with them a bit more. I think it's a beautiful song. I've always liked this song, even though it was always way more pop than I was kind of like in my comfort zone as a child, as a teenager. I was like, wow, Rush, they're not a metal band anymore. Now look at them. They got the Amy Mann, who cares? It's a great song. This is probably, in my mind, Rush's most pop song.
Yes, I was going to say that. And if this is going to break through in the pop charts, this would have been the song. This is the only time I've heard a Rush song on Australia radio.
Really?
Only time. Rush could not get arrested in Australia on radio. So there's a lot of us folks that, were flying the flag underground, but on mainstream radio, you would not hear a Rush song. But this is the only time, and they put it on kind of low rotation, but it didn't get any traction. Certainly saw the albums in the record stores. Didn't get a lot of real estate, like a stand and posters, but I was following them. And look, I'm not a big fan of the film clip. It looks a little bit hokey. It's very much of its time. I think if they did a different video clip, it might have, I don't know, it's very quirky. Probably too quirky for America. I don't know. Just in line what was the sort of DNA of a typical video clip, but the song's great. It really has emotional heart, and it's great that they've got a female voice.
I want to point out one more thing that I love about this song, and it's Neil's drumming. There's one drum roll towards the end of the song, and Neil sometimes he just hits the tastiest drum rolls. And on this album, there's some really great work by Neil on this album. There really is.
Yep. I'm going to focus on another song where the synth hook or the melody hook is just so emotive, and that's Open Secrets. The song wraps around a synth line that is so emotive, it's melancholy, and Geddy sings with passion and conviction, and the drumming has so much groove and drive. And, Geddy said that this song describes the inwardness and isolation that results from hiding feelings and keeping private secrets from one's intimate circle. These guys are really, they're thinkers, or Neil is, and a lot of his lyrics are just wonderful. He's not perfect. He does do some clinkers, and we'll talk about that on this album, but I think he really hits the mark on this. And that's what I like about Rush. They're the thinking man's rock band, and there's just a lot of I think they're very underrated when it comes to the lyrical stuff. People look at the 70s, but I think at the 80s they really hit the mark lyrically, or telling stories, or being observational. Do you like this song?
I do. I like Geddy's bass line on it a lot. It has a couple of different moods. It feels progressive in sort of this new pop Rush world. It feels like one of the more progressive songs on the album. Lyrically, it's solid. Vocally, Geddy is emoting. I consider it more of a deep cut for this album. It's not like, if I was going to boil down this album to like my top 5 favorite songs, it would probably squeak in at number 6.
I like the deep cuts, folks.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But one thing about a lot of these songs, and even on the Signals album, I don't know how often Rush played some of these live. I'm sure some of these they've never played live, but I think Open Secrets might have been a cool one to hear live.
I just love the vocal delivery, and it's that melody line that hooks me in. All right, next one you'd like to showcase?
I'm gonna go with what is currently. Should I? Is it my favorite song in the album currently? Yeah, sure. Let's say Prime Mover. Let's say Prime Mover. I absolutely love Prime Mover, and it's another one of those songs that has one of those Getty bass lines that really kind of are the backbone of the song. Um, there's the one line that I've been posting on my social media a lot lately, which is let me find it. Um, Alternating currents force a show of hands. We're throwing in the name of the new live album that's going to be coming out a year later. I love Prime Mover. It was a single, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure I have it in my collection somewhere in my vinyl. I don't think it gets enough attention. It's upbeat, it's tight, it's catchy as heck. Um, yeah, I absolutely love it. A couple times this week, I went back and I just played certain songs on repeat, and Prime Mover was one of them. From a point on a compass to magnetic north, the point of the needle moving back and forth. Come on. Neil just scratches my itch sometimes with his words. He really does.
He's an interesting wordsmith, and apparently he was just had a voracious appetite to read and learn. And I think he was incredibly misunderstood because he was the dude that never did the meet and greets, very socially awkward, but apparently, very nice guy. But he operated on a different sort of. He was on a different path to the other guys. They all worked together well, but he was on his own beat of his own drum. Pardon the pun. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, he came in last, obviously. The other two had been childhood friends since they were kids. And then Neil comes in, but he became a brother. But there's always the bond between the original two that is going to be different from the bond with the new guy. And he was always very bookish. As you said, he was a voracious reader. So he would be in the back of the tour bus with his face buried in a book. Whereas Alex and Getty might have been up jamming, reading rock magazines, or reading the latest interview with Jack Bruce, for example, something like that. That's why they called him the professor, because his nose was always buried in a book. And God, that's why we love Neil, and that's where a lot of the science fiction stuff started to come into Rush in the '70s and whatnot, and on Signals, as we mentioned.
Yeah, but I mean, in the '80s, there's just so much matters of the heart. And I think he's becoming a better lyric writer because he's expressing his feelings, and he's not doing a song that's like an Isaac Asimov type novel. He's doing songs about what he sees, what he feels, and I think it shows more maturity. That's why I like 80s Rush. That's why I like 80s Rush.
And I think maybe a lot of that might have been letting the guard down. It's easy. Well, I shouldn't say it's easy, but hey, let's write a song about Rivendell. You don't really have to express yourself in a song about Rivendell. You maybe have to express what you like about Tolkien. But then now we're getting into personal expression. Stuff like Time Stands Still, to me, speaks of fear. That's fear. That's realizing you're only immortal for a limited time to go forward. Yeah, and I think a lot of this is Neil learning to express himself with his own heart, and getting better and better and better at it from album to album. And I think once we hit Roll the Bones, he's absolutely spectacular at expressing himself.
Yeah, well, that's the beginning of the next cycle in my books. But the next song I'm going to talk about is, very briefly, I want to talk about Mission, which I really love that song. Getty singing is wonderful. When he sings Hold Your Fire, it's got such warmth and sincerity. This is another example of a song where it has that wonderful dreamy key change. Spirits fly on dangerous missions, imaginations on fire. There's so much of this in Rush World where, I'm laboring the point where they take a left turn and it just goes so dreamy. But that's not the song I want to talk about. I am going to talk about my favorite song on the album. And it may be a deep cut, and it's Turn the Page. Love this song. It is my favorite song on Hold Your Fire. Love it. It's got this wicked bass chordal groove, which, according to bass players, is incredibly difficult to play. And imagine singing and playing this is just... I've got to quote a rock critic. An unnamed rock critic said, Geddy plucks his strings like they owed him a gambling debt. It is so heavy. I thought that was just so wonderful, so spot on. To me, I think this is like Rush's version of A Day in the Life, you know, the Beatles song. It's how we relate to events in our everyday life. We turn the page, the good and the bad, you know, the bad's like in the wind tunnel. You know, and there are moments when on this song where it's the old Rush. They're jamming. You know, Alex is doing his guitar textures. He's swooping. He's doing the guitar, and there's like these little bass arpeggios, and the professor does the drum fills. I just think it's a wonderful song. What do you think of this song?
I would say you picked another deep cut. I would say this is, I'm going to be a little nasty here. I think this is the last good song on the album. I really like a lot of the progressive moments in it. There's one bit here on Turn the Page. Every day we're standing in a time capsule, racing down a river from the past. Hey, and there's more time capsule stuff, you know, Time Stands Still. There's recurring themes on this album, whether they're conscious of them or not. Yeah, Turn the Page is a great song. And I think one thing about Neil's lyrics is that sometimes you could take portions of songs and pull them out as a little statement on themselves. So you get this one thing. It's just the age. It's just a stage. We disengage, turn the page. So to me, that's some good life advice. There's somebody who's getting under your skin, somebody who's a constant nuisance. Disengage, turn the page. And I like to take these little isolated moments and use them as some little bits of Neil wisdom.
It's my favorite part of the album, and in fact, I'm gonna play a little bit of that.
How can anybody be enlightened? Truth is after all so poorly lit. Every day we're standing in a time capsule, racing down a river from the past. It's just the age, it's just the stage. Please disengage, we turn the page. We turn
Wow.
That bass, I mean, we were talking about the plucking thing, and he's plucking these chords, but he's also doing this little walking thing there. Do 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 do. Man, like this is what I'm talking about when I say how the bass is sort of the backbone on a lot of these songs. There's no question that the bass is the main feature of that bit there.
I've got shivers going up and down my spine, and there are some songs and moments and songs you never get sick of, and I just never get sick of that little bit in this song where it goes, it's just the age, it's just the stage, we disengage, we turn the page, and then it suddenly goes into that bass motive. The arrangements of this song are just so perfect. It's bliss. But sadly, this album is really it's kind of a very underrated album. It's kind of dismissed, and I don't know why. Well, actually, I do know why, and we're going to have a chat about it. Because there is one song that has in the Rush catalogue that gets a lot of flack, and that's Tai Shan. And probably it is very earnest, and I'm being very kind. I think a lot of people say it's cheese. I think it's a misstep, and it does taint the album. I love this album a lot, but it does taint it. And literally, when I have the record on, I get the needle and I just go, bip. What do you think of this song?
I was talking with a fellow Rush fan yesterday, and he was saying he loves this album until the pan flute kicks in. So yeah, dear. I mean,
oh dear.
On the last album, we had a song featuring prominent violin. Great stuff. On this album, we have prominent pan flute. And I can't speak. My memory isn't clear on this, but I don't know if Zamfir was the prime pan flute artist in the world at that point in our history. But certainly enough, pan flute became a popular instrument with the adult contemporary crowd. And this song's just a little too adult
Remember that
contemporary.
movie, The Mission, with Robert De Niro? There was some soundtrack and it was all pan flutes. Do you remember that? Maybe not. But
No,
I know world music was really in vogue.
Well,
And
yes, Paul Simon was hugely influential at that time.
Sting.
Sting, great example. They loved
Oh,
Sting. There's no question Getty was following Sting. Um, I don't like Tai Shan. I, I I feel that this album loses momentum at this point. I really do, and I think the ending just drags. I think these songs feel longer than they are. They really do.
I sort of disagree because I think High
Okay.
Water is a little bit of a return
You
to
think it's a
form.
redemption?
It's
Okay.
a redemption, but this, to me, I could imagine if Rush were ever going to do the symphony route, you know how like a lot of bands were doing band and symphony, band and Royal Philharmonic. I think this would have been the song. It's very kind of cinematic.
It is cinematic. There's a lot of cinematic in a lot of these songs that we've been discussing. It's a recurring theme in the 80s. You can go on other albums and pick out songs like Red Sector A, that is also very cinematic. Um, it's not to my taste, but I'm sure that there's somebody out there who thinks Tai Shan is just an incredibly beautiful song. And I mean, there's no question that they tried to make a beautiful song of this, but I think they stepped a little bit too far and maybe could have dialed it back a bit. I don't know. It's not, I'm sorry, at this point of the album, I'm just kind of like waiting for it to end. I don't skip songs, but I do wait for them to end.
So do you think Tai Shan unfairly hangs over High Water? So if Tai Shan was removed, High Water, you'd be more receptive.
Yes.
You've got this WTF feel about Tai Shan. You've listened to that and you go, what was that? And then High Water, you sort of, oh, it's still, we're still in this, you know, in this
Yes.
wheelhouse. I think High Water's
Unfortunately.
wonderful. I think it's really, I mean, the lyrics are about the life, the universe, and everything, and it's relating to water. I think Neil is really doing some soul searching, but I think because where it is located in the album, and it comes unfortunately after Tai Shan, it gets ignored.
I want to, you skipped over Mission a bit, but I want to spotlight actually two things.
Please.
Not just Mission, but also way back to when we were talking about the Analog Kid. There was a Rush tribute album in 1996 called Working Men. And two of the highlight songs on that were Rush covers by two singers that you would think, no, you wouldn't think they'd be able to cover Rush. Jack Russell from Great White did an amazing version of The Analog Kid, and Eric Martin from Mr. Big did Mission. And let me tell you, Eric Martin is the right guy to sing Mission. That guy just takes it into his heart and makes it his own. So for anybody who really likes that song Mission, check out the version with Eric Martin from Mr. Big on lead vocals. It is absolutely fantastic and very true musically to the Rush version.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's interesting you were saying about Alex sort of having some misgivings about this album, but he was on an interview with Pete Parter on the Sea of Tranquility, and he did make reference that he's reevaluated a lot of the 80s albums, and he's come to reappraise Hold Your Fire. So, again, I'll say it. I think it's a very dense album. There's a lot happening. It's probably less dense than Power Windows, but Alex is part of the sound, and he does some wonderful guitar, you know, chords, arpeggios, filling in the spaces. It's just a different type of guitar. It's not the Guitar Hero stuff of the 70s. And it was a different Rush, and I love it.
And, you know, clearly Alex at the time wanted to steer Rush in a more jammy direction on Presto, where his guitar got to have a little bit more breathing room. But I think you're right that, you know, he's right to reevaluate this because the innovation that he did on the guitar within the role, like sometimes the most interesting times in our lives creatively is when you're forced to do something in a certain box, and you're forced to adapt and be creative within certain confines. And, I have found just in my own personal life, when I'm editing a video and I'm like, oh, I have to do something a certain way because of some limitations that I have, and something sparks, something creative sparks from that, and I'm very happy with it. And I think for guitar on this album, obviously the keyboards have a huge role. Geddy's bass is forefront. Alex is taking a different role, but within that box, he innovated. He created something very cool, still progressive. It wasn't all, but it didn't have to be. He got to go back and do more of that in the 90s, and good for him. That's great. But I think there's certain things about 80s rock albums, when you do have things like keyboards creeping into the mix and other instruments having to adjust to this, I think you see these new limitations creating interesting moments of innovation. And I'm glad Alex has reevaluated this. I think he should be very proud of the guitar on this album. Tone wise, sure, it sounds very 80s, but it sounds great to me.
Well, thanks, Mike. I think it's pretty fair to say I think I know what your pick is of the albums. Signals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, spoiler alert, I think Signals might be my favorite Rush studio album. And the weight of that, Subdivisions is my favorite Rush song.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that.
Probably my favorite might be Power Windows, Grace Under Pressure, Hold Your Fire, Love. Out of these two, Hold Your Fire is probably my favorite, bar that song. It doesn't spoil it enough because I think the highs are just Mount Everest high. And as folks, you can see from this little video, I'm just buzzed to hear it and share it because, I don't know, it pulls the heartstrings, but Signals pulls the heartstrings too. Yeah, I think this has been a good chat, Mike, because, we're really talking about the beginning and the end of a chapter, aren't we?
We are. And I think Rush would acknowledge that too, that this is a certain span of albums and that Presto is a conscious change of direction. It was definitely a conscious change of direction. That was Alex saying, okay, listen, next album, I'm playing some freaking jammy guitar stuff. And I think probably Rush needed to do that with the 90s coming around the corner, whether they knew it or not.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Mike. We will do some more, I'm sure, in the very soon. Please, folks, let us know what you think about these albums. What's your favorite Rush album? We love reading your comments. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Please check Mike's channel, The Wonderful Grab a Stack of Rock. I've been on a ton of shows, and there's always a show every week and more shows in between. Wonderful, again, talking to you, Mike, about Rush, and you'll see more of Mike on the channel in 2025. All the best, and see you. Good night. Cheers.